So once again, my name is Andrew King. I'm the editor-in-chief of Canadian Musician, and this is producing, promoting, and profiting from your live stream. Joining us this evening, I will introduce her in a moment, is Laura Simpson, the CEO and co-founder of Side Door. We'll tell you all about Side Door and how they've basically become the, if not one of the leaders, I was going to say in Canada, but it goes wider than that. When it comes to helping artists do just what we're going to talk about tonight, the platform has been tailored in recent months to accommodate this huge paradigm shift we've seen to the virtual world with shows. The number of artists that they've helped is substantial. They have glowing anecdotes on their website. So we're really, really pleased to have Laura here joining us. A quick overview of what we're going to be chatting about. So as I mentioned, a little bit about Laura and Side Door. Now, Side Door started in 2017, though Laura is a veteran of the Canadian music business, based out here on the East Coast like I am. You can find out more about her here. And again, well, you know me, I'm here every month and appreciate you joining us. So really quickly, we're going to talk a bit about, give you an introduction to Side Door and the basics of live stream concerts. Then we're going to walk through some basics about planning your show and some of the different things to keep in mind. We're going to talk about promoting your show, some of the avenues to do that within Side Door and outside of Side Door, or I guess complementing your efforts with Side Door. We're going to talk a bit about the technical details of this. And then we'll get into launching and running your show, sharing some tips to help you, again, maximize your impact, maximize your audience engagement, and maximize your earnings. There we go. Laura, that's enough from me. Pleasure having you join us here. Why don't you fill us in maybe first, what's keeping you and the team busy right now with this big swell of attention over the last couple of months?
Oh, wow. Well, thanks so much for the introduction, Andrew. It's a real pleasure to be here and meeting all of you. I was just scrolling through the names to see if I know anyone who's watching. We've been busy. So we started as an in-person show, basically like an Airbnb for live events, mostly held in alternative spaces, everything from homes to community halls and black box theaters and that sort of thing. So we were matching touring artists with a space and helping them connect, create a smart contract for booking. The smart contract would dictate the split and the ticketing link, and so that everyone would be paid out on time and fairly according to the contract. We took an attitude of like, anybody can host a show, anybody should be able to book a show, and you should be able to have a show anytime, anywhere. So in recent months, that changed to the internet. So we took our platform and our booking tools and ticketing tools and applied it to the online format. And what we've discovered is that, there's a lot of education gaps is our biggest thing. So I would say right now, our biggest thing is trying to close that gap for education and steer people through these choppy waters and really help them connect with their audiences and earn a reasonable living.
Well, thank you for helping us help you do that here. I just grabbed a few of the, I guess we'll call them pillars that were kind of front and center on your website. Three things to mention here. And one, we heard a lot about this prior to live streaming, but the idea of assigning value to something, a lot of times a free show, no matter how exciting who the artist might be, in people's minds, they tend then to think that it's something that maybe doesn't hold as much value. Can you talk a little bit about that idea and what you've seen between live streams that are ticketed and not thus far?
Yeah, of course. And, obviously doing an online show is not a new thing. It's been happening for a long time, but most people are, streaming to Facebook and streaming with the expectation of donation. And there is nothing wrong with that. I think what we're seeing, though, is that there's a level of exhaustion from both the artist side and the audience side for the amount of free streams out there. And I come from a place of trying to ensure that artists are paid for what they do. And so that's been my lifelong mission, is to ensure that artists are paid what they earn, they deserve. And so we deeply believe in putting a hard ticket on a show. That doesn't mean that you could make it a ticket that's like a pay what you can or that sort of thing. But the idea of putting a ticket on a show immediately says this is going to be an event that's worth purchasing and sitting down for. And that's what we've seen. We've seen like 90% of audience members staying the entire time. Not only that, they come early and they start talking to each other early. And continue to discuss the show between shows if there's a regular series. And they're dressing up, they're sitting there with their families, they've got a glass of wine, they're making an event out of it. And that's a real delight to see that events that are ticketed are actually being treated as events. And I think that for the artist means that you're getting more engagement and more value back for yourself as a performer.
Bingo. Yeah. And to that point, you mentioned here that you don't want artists just to rely on donations. To the point of more money with interactivity, that was something too that I think prior to this big paradigm shift, at least speaking for myself, like the live stream show, obviously you can comment on a lot of these platforms and whatnot, but it kind of always seemed like a very one-way communication that, it was going from one person to a broadcast audience, and that was sort of the end of it. What we've seen with platforms like Twitch and Zoom, particularly, and with a lot of side door shows, as you recommend, is that when you're building in interactivity, letting audience members throw questions and requests and things like that, that they really feel connected to the experience. And thus more engagement with the artist, a better experience that then they may be more encouraged to buy tickets the next time around. So it's been really cool to see you championing this model. So let's jump into planning your show here. And as we mentioned there, and in Laura's description, so Side Door is not a streaming service or like a show platform. Instead, they're taking those existing platforms like Zoom, like Twitch, like YouTube Live, etc., and basically bringing them into the Side Door marketplace to help your show connect with an audience, maybe connect with a third-party curator where there's mutual benefit of uniting crowds together. So yeah, let's go through this. We were just talking a little bit about what kind of show you want to do. Obviously, we're recommending ticketed, but we've seen a lot of artists. In fact, Ben Kunder is live via Side Door this evening doing a fundraiser here. What are some of the different types of shows in that regard that you've seen hosted on Side Door that have been successful?
Yeah, I'd preface this by saying like our tagline is shows on your own terms. So like what we're really trying to do is, so you're like, okay, I want to do a show, and the flow now for the user is it going to be in person or online? We are still seeing some in-person shows popping up for folks who are able to do that, smaller shows, some hybrid shows, so maybe a few people in person and then a few people who are buying online tickets. And from there, you're deciding, are you doing it on your own? Are you going to have it with a promoter or a venue? So some venues are taking part of the cut because they're opening their doors, they're providing the production. Some promoters are coming on board and helping to use their marketing engine in order to promote the shows. So you kind of go every step of the way. We have Plus One, which is a great organization that you can add into the split if you want to have some of the funds go to charity. We've had lots of people just choose their own charities. Right now we have a program that was just announced with Rogers actually on the West Coast. And they've basically donated the money for the artist guarantees, and that the money that is raised from those shows are going to the charity of choice of the artist. So some really fascinating models out there. And as you mentioned, we do champion the use of Zoom. However, you can put whatever streaming link in there that you want to gate. You can make it a free show. So that you're using Side Door as an RSVP model. There's a robust system of communicating all the details necessary to your audience. We have basically 24/7 support on the shows. So there's a multitude of ways to do it. And so we kind of guide folks through that process. And as we've learned, lots of people have different ideas of how it should work and what it should be. So our main job is education, best practices, and guiding you through so that you're not left in the dark.
Bang on. Again, it's so nice to be able to put this into practice right now. A couple other things that we mentioned here. The single artist show, where essentially you've got one stream going out from one spot, more bulletproof. But we have seen events where you can switch the stream to different artists. So there can be an opener or a headliner you want to use those terms. Another thing to decide is if you are going to make it an interactive show, and if so, to what degree. At that point, if you are going to do that, you may want to enlist, well, I was going to say one person, but maybe a few to help you monitor your stream, help you engage with the audience, maybe handle the messaging feed, some of your technical details, so that you as the artist are just worried about performing. Yeah, you know what, I guess going forward, unless someone wants to throw a specific question, but why don't we just use everything in the context of Zoom? It's a popular platform. It's the one that Sidedoor recommends and has a really, really robust technical guide to using. And then, yeah, your other considerations. Like, this is something you can very well do on your own, set up a live stream show, promote it to your own audience. But again, there's some serious advantage to using a service, I was going to say like Sidedoor, but I don't know if there's anything like Sidedoor, what they've been doing in the online space here. Yeah, let's keep rolling here. And again, feel free to keep those questions coming. A quick reminder, because somebody asked, to find the shared files, if you click Event Board in your interface there, and there's a Shared Files tab where everything just made shareable, you can download it at your leisure. So we've got a show set up, say 2 weeks from now, Laura, we're going live from my super funky living room, two-piece band, trying to get as many of our fans out as we can. Yeah, we've got our team, our people on board. Let's first talk about Sidedoor. Like, you've got, and I didn't use the link because it was pretty long, but if you go to Sidedoor, on their blog, there's a phenomenal resource, How Do I Promote Online Shows, that walks you through a lot of this. But yeah, why don't we start as to how using your platform works as far as getting the word out, and then we can talk about things artists can be doing on their own with their own platforms to help the cause.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, we have a marketing team that basically supports promoting the shows at large. We do act as sort of an agent in ticketing, a ticketing agent as well. So in a way, the promoter role is often outsourced. We have everything from MRG to festivals to other folks who are using their marketing powers. But the way that we do the enhancement of the promotion is we have a weekly digest that goes out to everyone with all the shows. We have all the shows listed on the main page. We now have audience accounts, so that will soon enable folks, when they're buying tickets for shows, we will start to push other shows to them based on their interests. We'll also have, we have a weekly Spotify playlist that we update with everybody's music that's on it. We do all the social media posting. We have a video that goes out every week. We actually have an editorial team, so you can go and find our zine. And so we do editorial pieces on some of the shows, especially some of the more interesting shows. Like we have a show tonight. I think it's happening right now, actually. A band from South Africa is playing, who I watched last month. They're amazing. Yes, and then we also have folks sending folks out for reviewing shows. So these are actual journalists who we've hired to work at arm's length to sort of talk about what's happening in the community. And I mean, just on that point, in terms of journalism right now, I'm a former journalist. I'm in touch with so many journalists who have been currently laid off. And it's like an honest travesty. It's in line with what's going on within the arts scene right now. It's a really tough scene. And I've been finding a lot of value working with some of these journalists who are underemployed to help promote shows. They still have their heart in it. And so if you know of a journalist who, recently has been unemployed, there's been some really creative ways of helping them get they have great mailing lists. They have great, ways of promoting shows. So if you have a friend in that world, I would heavily recommend hitting them up for some freelance work at this time. But the biggest thing I would say is, for us, the biggest successes are, think about your shows conceptually. So what we're seeing is a really a lot of success for people who are saying, this show is about this album, or this show is an all request couple of hours, and so you get to engage ahead of time. Or this show is in the theme for Mother's Day, was a really big one that we saw. So think about it conceptually and then go with that as a promotional package. Oh,
phenomenal idea. Okay, then outside of Sidedoor's tools, yeah, I mean, artists are no strangers to self-promotion. Obviously, your social media list. social media audience, your email list, which hopefully you have if you've joined us for any of these webinars before. I think it comes up every time. It is such a valuable tool, huge asset. And by pretty much all reports, your email marketing is going to be more effective and have a higher turnover conversion rate than what you're doing on social media, even though they're all very good tools. Yeah, what about, have you seen anything cool kind of outside the box as far as people looking to promote their shows in fun ways since this whole thing started?
Yeah, I've Danny Michel, who's done a few shows with us. He does a really great like video promo, and sometimes he just grabs, because in Zoom you can record the shows, and so he'll do like just a 30-second video of stuff that happened before in the last show. And it's just a really quick preview of what people can expect for the show that they're going to get into. Because sometimes when you buy a ticket to an online show, you're not really sure what you're going to get. Right. So I think just a little preview, a little video of what's going to happen, cut really short with, some really nice music. You can do that, with Clips, the app on your iPhone these days. So it's, make it really, don't get overly complicated, but a little preview of what you're in for has been really well received.
Awesome. I love that idea of conceptualizing your shows, which, it makes a ton of sense. And I feel like maybe this is like bias in hindsight here, but I feel like even before this, that there was just such a big swell of like 10th, or maybe it's just because it's the bands I follow, but like 10th anniversary of this album, playing it in its entirety. And it's cool to see that transition and even flourish in this environment. That's a phenomenal suggestion. All right, let's open this up to some questions before we move on. Great question here from Steve. I guess I'll put one in front of you first though, Laura. Can you briefly describe how the not funding, but rather payment model works for Sidedoor? Like for an artist to jump on the platform, what are they looking at as far as either fees or splits with you, depending on the event and criteria?
Sure. So if you have a paid ticket, then the split is going to be 10%. So we take a traditional booking agent split. So that means that there's no upfront cost you're not spending any money with us until you actually earn money, and that money is paid out upon the completion of the show. There are, of course, we're not spending money for you on any gear that you have to buy. So there are costs to doing the show that you should consider. We do also, if you want to do a show that's larger than 100 people and longer than 40 minutes with Zoom, you would have to have your own Zoom account. However, we're like in the middle of trying to negotiate a way that you can just build that into our own platform, because we've seen that it's sometimes a point of friction when people are trying to figure that out. So we're trying to reduce the amount of friction for people. So it's 10%. If you do a free show, it's free. So you could do a free show and just have a donation button and do it that way. So if you want to do that, you can do that as well.
Okay. A question here from Steve, and Steve, help me out if I'm misquoting or misunderstanding here. But you ask, are those previews available yet? I'm on the site, I'm assuming you mean Sidedoor, and would love to preview briefly before you purchase a ticket. I think he's referring to the Danny Michel previews, which, if I understood properly, like, is that something that you're hosting, or is that something that Danny is putting together for his audience and then referring people to your ticketing platform?
That's right. Yeah, Danny was doing that on his social media to promote. But we are actually trying to, that's one of the things that we're building, is the video embeds, and suggesting that people do previews on the site itself. But that's through the artist socials that you would see that.
Okay, so there you go, Steve. If you want to check out Danny Michel's social media, you'll catch those. And actually, I think that's a great practice with anything, is that check out how other artists have done it, artists that you like, how you follow, not just their streams and like what the backdrop looks like, how long are they going, what type of engagement are they offering, but just everything. If they're finding a successful means of promotion and are in your scene, in your sphere, don't be afraid to follow the example.
I will also mention that we have reviews by the audience. So just, in order to sort of promote artists that are maybe less well known, we really wanted to allow the audience to give feedback, and that feedback is then posted on the artist profile. So if you go to, say, Danny Michel's artist profile right now, you'll see reviews from the shows that he's done. You'll see past shows and future shows. And yeah, we're trying to get that even more robust. So it's, like not just a written review, but like what do you expect when you see this kind of show? So we're really hoping that the review system will help signal boost some of the artists that are lesser known, but really great.
Awesome. Well, Steve's got a follow-up, I guess, suggestion here, but yeah, previews before I sign up. I'm going to tell you some more sign up after seeing what's available. Fair enough. Although if you check out, like, go digging on Side Door site, though, I found it to be very comprehensive and like very simply and basically kind of laying out the different steps of here's how this works. But I mean, we've got a resource right here. Mary,
YouTube channel, you can go and see how some of the shows are working. If there's 2 webinars that are up for free, they have some highlights from online shows as well. And I believe in our Instagram stories and some of the other ones, you can see some of the previews there too.
Awesome. Mary, great to have you join us. Mary's wondering, if an artist is promoting a new album, this is a great question, and considering doing a number of live stream shows, tell us a bit about like oversaturation, and have you seen the model of maybe an artist being able to do a series of shows in succession and have them all be successful? What are some ideas for diversifying that and making sure that you're not just drawing from the same well too much?
So right now we have a couple of things that people are adopting, because I do agree you don't want to oversaturate your audience, especially now that you have a global audience. And if everybody can watch you all the time, then it starts to lose its luster quite quickly. So either I would say stagger it out and have some very specific concepts that you're going to do for each show, or what we're working towards, and there is a current workaround, which is basically geo-gating your shows so you can virtually tour different markets. So the workaround right now, of course, is to launch your show, have a private link. So that means that the show doesn't appear on the public page, but the private link would then be used to geocate to a certain market. So if you only wanted to sell tickets, say, to Calgary, then you used your social media posts and you used that link for the ticketing, and it was only sold to Calgary. And so people could buy tickets. They only saw those posts if they were in Calgary. And then you could do that sort of across the board. And it's been interesting because people are using their Spotify, like listeners in different markets, and saying, okay, I always knew I had lots of people listening to me in Brazil, maybe. So you could geogate that workaround for Brazil. And so we're exploring geogating as well to see how that would function from our side. So it's sort of like when you try to watch Saturday Night Live from Canada and NBC says, no, you're not in the right area. That's the kind of thing that we're looking into. So you could basically choose the market where you want to do the show. And doing that, not only can you sort of virtually tour, but then you get to work with promoters in sort of each of those areas in order to boost the shows in those markets.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I'll add in, it's like not quite as sophisticated, but we just helped Mika Barnes, jazz vocalist, launch his virtual tour for his new record. And what Mika did was partner with, I think, about a dozen like promoter partners, and that is actual venues like the Jazz Bistro in Toronto, jazzcast.ca or .fm, sorry if I got that wrong. He did the event with us. So it's like media outlets, radio stations, podcast platforms, and basically each one is essentially the promoter. So whereas this isn't geo-locked by any means, in each case, he's leveraging the platform or partner he's with to bring more people into his world. And it looks like he's had pretty consistent numbers with each stream over the course of a couple of weeks. So yeah, just another idea in the pot there. Okay, I've got one more here, Michael. I haven't really vetted this one, so I'm going to read it out loud. And then we'll move on after this, but keep the questions coming. We've got another Q&A coming up shortly. Stephen Page, ex-BNL, and for this guy, hopefully future BNL, again, we can all dream, has been doing a weekly Zoom-based show, which when you attended last week, were very well attended. So at $8 a person, you must be doing well. The stream was poor quality, video freezing sometimes. Aha, what do you recommend for streaming gear to maximize quality? Let's just move on because we are going to be talking about production and audio right now. Let's do it. So some tips here. Now, before we spoke, Laura, you made clear that you've got colleagues that are more technically versed in what we're doing.
Dan, yeah, it's definitely Dan, the co-founder guinea pig artist that gets to do all the things.
Who did the majority of this document that, again, if you haven't downloaded it yet, do. And if you're not downloading it from us, it is available at sidedooraccess.com. Can't recommend it highly enough. So here we go, Michael, to answer your question, and connection. I mean, if the video is freezing, that sounds very much like a connection issue. And I mean, it could be on your end, but it seems that you know that it was coming from the other side. So hardwire your connection. I was going to say if you can, because I'm working on a computer that doesn't have a hardwired internet connection. Anyway, that is a rock solid. Make sure that you've got a really strong connection and test the hell out of it before you go live. Even at the same time of day, something we learned in the heat of, like in the middle of the pandemic, is that there are certain times of day where local bandwidth was just getting exhausted. And maybe you notice at home, like on your Netflix streams, that they might gap out a bit at certain times of day when people were going heavy on it. So some tips to keep in mind. Lighting, here, you can use this one with an example. Sidedoor recommends that you go front lit. You can get those little LED ring cameras, very inexpensively, that do a great job. You will see me here. I won't speak for Laura, who's got a very nice, warm, natural light in that room, but I am in an office with overhead fluorescence and not front lit. So
it's more like if I turn to my window, it would be much better, right?
Ta-da. So yeah, there you go. You have front lighting better than top, or especially rear lighting. I'm sure we've all like done the FaceTime with someone where they're in front of the window and you just see like keep in mind. And yeah, natural soft light. So we won't get it too much into lighting temperatures, but again, I'm in fluorescence, which is a very, very cold white and not at all natural, like nice, soft, warm 2500K daylight. Webcam. So I don't know about you, Laura, I'm coming at you with the built-in camera on a MacBook, which is fine. You can do a great quality stream. In a lot of cases, people won't be able to tell the difference, but again, very inexpensively, you can find yourself a high-def 1080p resolution webcam, 30 frame per second frame rate, which I guess we don't need to get too technical there. Just keep that one in mind. And here's one where I'd love to crowdsource from you, or not crowdsource, Laura source. But with all of the streams that you've hosted and probably checked out, tell us a bit about some of the cooler settings and how you can make what you're in front of all the more engaging, and how that helps out with the overall experience of the show.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been talking to Dan for years from his studio, so I've become very aware of everything in his studio, all of his posters, his artwork, and that sort of thing. And you can do the same. I mean, I think I'm sitting in my own office with all my posters behind me here. I think I've seen some beautiful use of fairy lights and that sort of thing, bunting, flags, and I mean the thing is that if you start to imagine, this is not a replacement for a show, but this is in its own format that you can explore. There's a group called Heist that does incredible online shows. They're largely doing it through Twitch, and they've been using a lot of virtual backgrounds. So they're working in different formats for what you can add in not just your physical background, but your virtual backgrounds. And that's some really crazy, amazing stuff. If you want to get some ideas from them. But yeah, I would say it's got to not be distracting, but rather enhancing your performance. Obviously, you don't want something that's going to be so difficult. The other thing is I've seen a few gaffes of people having too much stuff and they're knocking stuff over, or they're too packed in, and so they have no room to maneuver. So yeah, I think you can get really creative with what you're looking at, because of course you're looking at the same thing pretty constantly. But one thing I always do as an audience member is, if I'm doing it from Zoom, I put it on gallery view. I'm actually looking at everybody all at once. And to me, that is part of the experience. It's not just watching the artist, but you're watching everyone else watch the artist. So that's been a background piece of in and of itself.
Cool. Oh yeah, I should. Well, maybe we can share it if I find it. But there's one I think of one of Dan's shows where it's literally hundreds of frames just surrounding him in the middle, and that's cool. It's a cool thing. Maybe I'm going off script here, but like you mentioned that this has been around well before the COVID-19 pandemic, and people are making their predictions about what future of shows might look like. But I think like even if a year from now, vaccines out and everyone's kind of back to usual, this is such a unique experience, and we've seen it increasingly done in such a cool and engaging way that I think this is here to stay for a long time. And the sky's the limit. Like when you're talking about the backgrounds and what you can do with that, and like integrate visual design and whatnot, like this is there's so much potential in this space. You guys must be pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and it's been a joy to actually attend all these shows. Like we weren't going to all these shows before because they were all across North America. But oftentimes you'll see Side Door staff in the shows, and we're there as support, but we're also there as, just to watch the show because it's great. And I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is, people are realizing that you don't have to just play music all the time. The Q&A, the storytelling, the people are playing games. They're playing like quizzes and just like, I don't know. It's especially the theme-based ones. It's been the most amazing engagement that I've seen, and especially for audiences who you would never tour to see. Like Dan has fans that he's never been able to tour to Uruguay, to Estonia, he had somebody from India the other day. It's just like, and he's talking to them in a Q&A, and this is never going to happen in real life. So I love the like, what can we do with this medium that we can't do in real life attitude,
Totally. And like, not to take something very human and commercialize it, but I mean, we talk about that idea of the super fan. And I'm just thinking of someone who, maybe likes Dan's records, but is so geographically removed that it's never really been kind of part of their world, to now have that avenue. The engagement potential there is just huge. Anyway, lots of potential here. I wouldn't be surprised if a few months we hopefully have Laura back and can talk about the next stage of evolution of this whole thing. But here we go. There's some basics on your visual production. Audio, though, is key. And I'm using this for an article I'm writing right now, actually. But one of my university professors once gave a bit of an experiment and was like, imagine watching a movie with no sound, like totally muted, but you can see all the visuals. And now pretend you're doing the same thing, only close your eyes and just listening. Like, which one are you going to understand? Which one are you going to be more engaged to follow? And then kind of taking that into, like, say YouTube, before, if you were looking at a live performance of your favorite band on YouTube, if the video is crap but the audio is clear, I will watch that any day of the week over something with HD crisp video and lousy sound. And that's not just for music, that's for so many things. But I mean, we're talking music here. All this to say, your audio is paramount for this and for so many other things. So yeah, these are all kind of taken again from that technical document provided by Side Door. Dan, when he says that the most important thing is time and not tech, if I'm understanding properly, it's basically the idea of, again, getting a setup, testing the hell out of it, making sure that you're rock solid before jumping into this, and no fancy mic is going to save you if you don't have all of your ducks in a row.
Yeah, it's I mean, sad but true, but sometimes sound checks are foregone. People put a lot of effort into their setup, but they don't have a moderator, so they can't actually hear if something's going wrong. They're not listening, with their earbuds. They're listening to, so they're not hearing the actual sound. There's a lot of sort of ways to ensure that your sound is going to be good and it doesn't involve a lot of tech. It just involves some time and in doing it. And we actually have a moderator webinar up now, and I do highly recommend, even if it's a friend or a partner who's in another room, who's able to listen and not only like sort of check and make sure that your feed is okay and your sound is okay, but they're also there to sort of moderate the chat and help to navigate that whole thing too. So just having somebody else and do that ahead of the show. I also with Zoom, and especially, and you have it here with the webinar, is you can enable the waiting room so that you can do this before the show without anybody paying attention, or that they can't see you. And then once you get the show going, you can disable the waiting room and just let everyone in. But at least you know it right before the show that it sounds good, it looks good, the internet is working. That's what he means by time over tech.
Bang on. We'll touch on, well, actually, no, we'll get it out of the way, but maybe I have these out of order. It is so prevalent in said document. I think at one point it says if you're only going to take away one thing, if you're using Zoom, change your settings to get original audio. Basically, Zoom and a lot of these platforms are compressing the audio that's being sent out so that it takes up minimal bandwidth so that as many people as possible can access the stream. But we were talking about your art here. And yeah, you need a strong enough connection that you can send that original uncompressed audio out. It will make the world of a difference. So yeah, wedge that in there. Very, very key takeaway. But yeah, then it says, you know, when you're getting set up, making sure your connection's rock solid and that all of your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Cyber recommends professional help, and streamtuneup.com. Not familiar and forgot to throw it into my browser before we jumped in. What service does that provide? How does it work symbiotically with what you're doing?
So Guillermo, who's at that link there, he's somebody we found through Sarah Harmer, actually. She had done a show with us. She had the best sound we heard at that point. And so we asked her, you know, what sound technician she was using. And he had basically done a virtual sound check with her to sort of really get everything working functionally. And so this is a role, this virtual sound technician role is something that we've seen popping up in more and more. And so this is just one example. You know, I think some sound technicians would say that they wouldn't go down that road to give advice to you over online, that they would say it's, you know, gear dependent and that sort of thing. But there's going to be some folks that are purists and some that are not. So just find the ones that will help. And there's definitely ways that you can do virtual sound checks to get the best of the situation that you have, essentially.
Bang on. And yeah, Laura, please dive in here. I was trying to do the heavy lifting here just because I had so recently gone through your document and had a talk with Dan. And yeah, we've been covering this topic quite a bit. But as far as your configuration, so right now, as you're seeing, and I'm assuming it's the same with Laura, but I'm coming at you straight from a laptop with that camera and that mic, and we're speaking here, everything looks and sounds fine. But yeah, again, we're talking about your music here and something that you know, you want as much control over its presentation as possible. So you can do a live stream like this. Most people are doing a live stream like this. And as far as that saturation, the idea of assigning value to things, people notice the production value, especially now with so many examples out there. So beyond this, you can plug in your Blue Yeti. I think it's still the most popular USB mic out there. Then you've got at least a better capture at your source, but you're still kind of limited to acoustic instruments and your room sound. So beyond that, if you get yourself a USB interface, from there, you can incorporate a mixer, and that's where you can be doing electronic instruments. You can be integrating backing tracks and software pads, even doing DJ sets with your setup. And like even the most elaborate interface and small mixer these days, you know, thanks to so many companies, you can get a really, really good setup for, say, probably a couple $100, maybe less. Yeah, but do you have anything to add about like people's gear setup and maybe examples of what you've seen versus someone with a really robust setup versus like maybe with Sarah versus the more typical USB mic or straight in from the device?
Yeah, I've seen, I think even in that document, Dan has examples and links out to things that he would recommend to buy, even he's not getting any commissions or anything, don't worry. But, there's basically the setup that he went out and bought. I think it cost him $200, $300. And, we have had an average right now of between 12 to 14, $1,500 people averaging per show. So you think about the investment short term is really going to pay off long term, especially if you get a reputation for having good quality shows.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's worth the spend if it's, a couple $100 to do this, especially because we don't see this going away anytime soon. And the one thing that I would say is that the mixer, like actually allowing for your sound to come from the microphone directly in front of you instead of your laptop is so key because it depends on the room that you're in. I'm sure you've heard my dog barking here. There's the sirens outside, and how can you limit that? You really want to ensure that, and that also depends on your upload speed. So there are ways to test your upload speed and ensure that, what you're sending out is at a rate that's actually, usable. There's always, going back to one of the comments there's always going to be people on the other end who are maybe not downloading as fast as they need. That's the internet. Unless you have military grade internet, that could be a problem. But if you are controlling your upload speed, that's one of the biggest things that you can try to do.
Totally. Okay. Here, we don't need to spend much time, but just so it's here and people can pause it on the future, but a quick checklist of things for your technical setup. We talked about original sound. That was so key. Dan stresses that one heavily. Your sound check, thumbs up. Hardwire your internet if you can. Maybe make sure that you can. Arrange the co-host to help moderate. Yeah, that one's key. From the technical side, again, to have someone monitoring the audio, actively watching what your stream looks like at any given time, and interfacing with your audience, and then maybe kind of feeding questions and engagement up to you. It's going to make you able to focus on your art and everything run a lot smoothly for your audience. Zoom, disabling screen sharing and muting all of the mics. Document that PDF. It's all right there with graphics, easy as pie. And there you go. Adjusting your account setting to ensure all ticket holders have access. There's a great one, actually. Laura, if I'm not mistaken, even the highest tier of Zoom caps at 1,000 attendees. I'm thinking to like that Post Malone Nirvana set from a couple months ago, though, that I think millions of people were checking out. How do some of the different platforms relate in this regard? And like, if your goal is to get to as many people as possible and you've got the audience to go past 1,000, any ideas or things that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actively vetting platforms to bring in as vendors that we will have integrations for. So we just demoed one today that has a limit of 10,000. And they have a really robust system that champions sound first over video. And they actually do have the interactive element. They have some really exciting features that I'm very much hoping that we can introduce to the platform. So like our goal is, again, if you're a user, then you're gonna come in and say, this is the kind of show that we want to do. And so we can steer you in the direction according to the kind of show that you want to do. So if you want to have a show for lots of people, we recommend this platform. If you want to have a show for a small amount of people, and you can have great shows for 25 people, please, do not measure your show on how many people are attending. It can be amazing and interactive, and you can charge a higher price if your cap is like, I'm going to do a show for 20 people. Everyone gets to ask a question and tell a story. That can be great. But yeah, there's also the ability to use a private YouTube link and gate it that way. So lots of different ways, and that's you can do that with Side Door now. You can use a private YouTube link, and then it goes to that. What we're working on is the security of the tickets. So we'll have Zoom ticket security within a couple of weeks, and that basically means that you can't share the link out. You will not that will not send the audience the link. This will prevent Zoom bombers and, all of that sort of the ability for somebody to basically, let's say, buy a ticket and then post it on Twitter, and then you lose those precious seats. So yeah, we've been working really hard on Zoom security for registering audience members and registering them in the background of that show. We're going to be doing the same thing for a broadcast style platform. That'll essentially mean if you don't care about doing the interactive element and you want to have larger audiences, but you want to ensure you have a secure ticket, then we're going to have that as well. Because we know that, like if somebody buys a ticket, they want to know it's their ticket.
Yeah. Well, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, like you are at the cusp, at the forefront of this with Zoom. Like this technology doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, it's there's some folks that are doing the registration, and what we're trying to do is make it a seamless thing, right? So essentially you buy a ticket, and when you buy a ticket, you're creating an account with Side Door, and that will do all of the security registration features in the background. So right now you can have a secure ticket, but then you're actually still getting shared the link. And so there's a way to sort of a workaround. And once you get into the Zoom, you can right click the top eye and then like share that out. So we're trying to make it rock solid so that you can't get around it.
Very, very cool. All right, one more. We'll open it up for questions again. If you've got anything you'd like to put in front of Laura, keep them coming. But I guess another checklist of sorts. And now that I think about it, we've touched on a lot of these, but following other artists' examples. Laura, can I put you on the spot? And by asking you if I can put you on the spot, I'm putting you on the spot. So, so forgive me then if it's cruel. But yeah, if I had to ask you maybe for 2 or 3 streams that you've seen, Side Door or otherwise, that were very memorable that you would point to for people to say, if you want to see this done very, very well, what would you suggest?
Oh gosh, I've seen Jill Barber do some excellent shows, really, really weighing heavily on the interaction piece. Let me see. I really think Danny Michel was doing a good job. He had a couple of cameras going on, and he had his huge studio, and you could sort of see all of his instruments in the background. I thought that was amazing. The band that's playing right now, that South African band, was amazing. They had dancers, which was just, like, delightful and amazing. Yeah, I think my favorite shows have been, the ones where I miss the person's music the most. Like I watched Tim Baker's show recently with my family, and Tim's album that he released, he played first in houses across Canada through Side Door, including my house, which was the first on the tour. And so I heard him playing songs like Dance that hadn't been recorded yet, and that was amazing because then they were then in the world as a recording, and he was playing giant places. And so I think there's a real opportunity there that people are experimenting more. They're releasing music faster right now. They're testing stuff out live online, and especially if those online shows are not recorded and they're just like, this is happening now, so you better be there. People are hearing songs first in these shows and then getting the recording later, so that it still makes it really special.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that Tim solo record from last year is a standout too. Yeah, I think we've touched on all of these, but they're here to reiterate. But a co-host and a moderator, like even if you're not going for a high degree of interactivity, and we've spoken about reasons why you should consider it, but even if you're not, as far as just, again, maintaining that stream health and kind of acting as a liaison between you and everything going on other than your performance, engage a friend, a family member. But there you go. We talked about Q&A, taking requests. I even saw that some people are like unmuting all after each song to let people cheer so that the artist gets a little bit of love and encouragement, and then go back quiet during the presentation, which is very cool. Something often you see on Facebook Live, for example, but that works really well for any type of show, is to have a cool branded image or something that, whether it's in your waiting room or even just for your promo materials, but anything you can do to sort of complement your show in terms of visuals, engaging content is a big help. Yeah, there we go. We've got about 5 minutes left for the hour here. If anyone wants to throw some additional questions at us, sidedooraccess.com, once again, is the home base. And there's a great FAQ there. Again, the document that I know I've mentioned 5 times here. But we were, like Canadian Musician, we were trying to find something like this, and then even talking about trying to help compile something like this. And lo and behold, it exists, and it exists because of Side Door, and it's very, very helpful, even if you're not using the platform, but you should consider it. To everyone that has asked already and leading up to this, yeah, I was going to say within 24 hours, but it'll be some point during the business day tomorrow. We will circulate an email to everybody with a link to a full recording of our session that you can access on demand. Sorry, these links are hard to see. It defaults to that light purple. Yeah, Laura, is there anything else we want to add? Feel free to let people know about Side Door, maybe some cool events coming up, anything they should be keeping an eye out for. The floor is yours.
Oh, I would just say, like, you know, we're working towards an online community, whether it's for online shows or in-person shows, where people can just create the show together. So whether you're an artist or you have a friend who, you know, takes pictures, or you have somebody else who wants to write reviews, or, you know, somebody who's an audience member and they're just a super fan, like, we really want to create a community where everyone plays a role in the shows. It's the way it should be. People should feel agency in these shows. And that's a big thing right now. I think to get through this, there is no question we need art, and everyone can play a role in the shows that we create. So I'll just leave you with that idea. Hopefully we can all pitch in and make it great.
Outstanding. Okay, one came in. Jim, we'll do it. We've got a few minutes here. Jim asks, if you are a venue hosting an artist for a stream, but have your own box office infrastructure. Oh, interesting. How would the Side Door option work if that's the platform artists want to use? Is the venue basically just a production house? Good question.
Yeah, so we do have venues who have existing ticketing agreements for their in-person shows. And they, you know, I don't know what the conversation is with those ticketing vendors, but they have been using us for the online shows. And then, yes, they do become pretty much like a production house. And I've been talking to huge theaters that do have their own existing ticketing system, but there is, I guess, a gap in what they're doing for online shows. So what we're seeing is sometimes they'll sell tickets for the in-person show through their existing ticketing vendor, and they'll also use us for the online show. So they'll have 2 tickets sold depending on what your experience is that you're purchasing.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks, Jim. And I guess that was at the wire. We'll cap it there. But again, it's Laura Simpson, CEO and co-founder of Side Door, sidedooraccess.com. Andrew King, editor-in-chief of Canadian Musician. We are at canadianmusician.com. nwcwebinars.com is the home base for these. We are back late July with the session with our friend Karen Kozowski, Nashville-based songwriter, producer with some major Canadian artists. And we're going to be talking about remote songwriting sessions and making creative collaborations work remotely in the virtual space. Join us for that. Laura, I'm going to lose you when I shut down here. So if it's all good, I'll let you get back to your evening and give you a dial tomorrow to say thank you and share stats. But for now, I'll let everyone get back to their evening. Patricia, thanks for the kind words. Megan, thanks for the kind words. Jim, yeah, they're coming in with some nice things to say. Anyway, we'll let everyone go, and thank you a ton. This has been great.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Andrew. Thanks, everyone. It's nice to see you. Take care of yourself.
Everyone.